Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to Authentic Impact, celebrating or combating youth homelessness in Columbus. We have a celebration for Huck House later today, so combating youth homelessness and celebrating our achievements are big on my mind right now. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. If you have questions during today's presentation, please put them in the chat box. We'll address questions at the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording with all of you in the next 24 hours, as well as a link on our website. We thank you for being here today. I'm looking forward to a very informative discussion. My name is Sonya Thesing. I am the Executive Director of Huckleberry House, a Central Ohio nonprofit organization providing services for youth who are currently or are at risk of becoming unhoused. I'm joined today by Councilmember Shayla Favor. Councilmember Favor has served the residents of Columbus on City Council since January 2019 and is chair of the Housing, Health and Human Services, Criminal Justice, and Judiciary Committees. As a member of council, she has been intentional about focusing her work to ensure that everything she legislates and advocates for is filtered through an equity lens in order to address these disparities and combat racism through policy. Councilmember Favor is extremely passionate about housing, and we are pleased to have her here with us today. Shannon Isom is the president and CEO of Community Shelter Board, a collective impact organization driving strategy, accountability, collaboration, and resources to achieve the best outcomes for the people of Columbus who face homelessness, Columbus and Franklin County. In her role, Shannon facilitates and leads work in our community, ensuring everyone has a place to call home. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here today. Shannon, let's start with you and Community Shelter Board. We look forward to hearing a bit about the work of the Community Shelter Board broadly, and then learning about the top-line results from the recent publication, Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, Impact Evaluation Annual Report.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I appreciate the invite, Sonya and Huckleberry House, on behalf of the Community Shelter Board, as well as the board. I just really appreciate being here for such a time as this. The Community Shelter Board, for some that may not know or not familiar with us, leads a coordinated community effort. We make sure that everyone, committed to making sure that everyone has a place to call home in Columbus and Franklin County, Ohio. And as you all are experiencing, this is becoming a tougher and tougher job to do every single day. As the system leader, though, the prevention and response systems towards homelessness is not only important, but I say it's obligatory if we are going to keep up pace with what we know is an increasingly alarming stress that we have here within our community. How do we respond to homelessness is on top of mind for everyone. Community Shelter Board, because of this, and has been doing it for years, brings together service provider organizations within Franklin County, driving collaboration. And our goal is to do this with a level of efficiency, certainly always being hyper-focused on strategy, but also an effective use of our community resources. And that includes our human capital that assures that people that are experiencing homelessness can quickly regain housing stability. We are committed to ensuring that we are strengthened in that strategy as we refresh that strategy every single solitary year, that we are building capacity, we're ensuring accountability, that we are monitoring and ensuring compliance and quality within the work that we do. We drive for coordinated outcomes. And these coordinated outcomes has to be centered on best practices. They have to be centered on results. And we have to ensure that they are serving those people that are facing homelessness. Just in this past year, we have served well over 15,000 people. That's a lot of people to serve. And we see that number continuing to increase. So part of this strategy is coordinating this strategy and leading the plan to address homelessness. We are basing this off of a framework called A Place to Call Home. This framework, which is led by this coordinated system, led by the Community Shelter Board, is a strategic framework that articulates our community's vision to make sure that everyone is served. Each goal aligns with federal and state plans to then align with local plans to address homelessness. That includes priority strategies, all based on action. Likewise, that action is based on housing as being the solution for homelessness, and we cannot move from that. This is a framework that includes goals that are tailored and I hope sensitive, right? Equitable to all populations that are facing homelessness that is served by this system, by this coordinated system of care. Our goals are aligned with this community, but also a broader community of work that already exists, that's already underway. Goals are also aligned with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that our performance measures are reflective of this federal performance measure to ensure that we not only are address homelessness, but we're also prioritizing homelessness from a space where we can competitively speak to it, and that our actions, our strategies are reflective of this bigger, larger framework. I wanted to pause as I've given you some of the background of why we're here and what we're doing. And I really believe the excellent space in this community of having this coordinated system of the Community Shelter Board. But let's really talk about why we are really here. Why we are here is what this slide shows without moving into descriptive detail. What I hope that you see is what we see and what we are experiencing, that our young people experience as they move through the system. As you see, for a youth to move, who's experiencing destabilization of housing, who's experiencing homelessness, I hope that you see from this slide that there's no straight line. But this is not a linear, because you are experiencing homelessness, therefore there's housing. You see that. That you also see that there are confounding and conflating factors that could move our youth into a disarray, a conglomeration of being touched by so many different services, programs, people, and still potentially being in unstable housing. I hope that you pause and see that this picture is why we're here. Next slide. We, out of that and a reaction to that, had the opportunity, this community had an opportunity to then respond to that slide, to say this is unacceptable, and within that was able to move forward with a youth homelessness demonstration program. What is it? It is in 2018, the Department of HUD selected Columbus and Franklin County out of many other communities around funding to demonstrate how a comprehensive approach can dramatically change youth homelessness. Not only change it, but what we know that can happen, what we are all committed to, is that not only does it need to be reduced, it needs to be eradicated. We worked with community stakeholders locally to develop and implement a comprehensive new approach. And these new approaches and strategies would ensure that all youth from age 24 and under would have a safe place to call home. The plan was developed with input from more than 250 stakeholders that included youth and young adults. And these young adults also included those with lived experiences around homelessness, around destabilization of housing, and through a youth action board, those voices representing themselves. That youth and young adults inspired, informed, and provided our direction on this coordinated collective effort. So who are our partners? Our partners, have to say, shout out first to Huckleberry House. It also includes the Community Housing Network, Home for Families, the YMCA of Central Ohio. This offers a variety of services. And these services were funded and provided. That includes coordinated entry, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing as part of our portfolio. We will share a few highlights of what we learned from this demonstration project. We put a link into the evaluation and put a link to the evaluation report. If you don't mind, we put that into the chat. This link will provide an executive summary of where we are with this demonstration project, but also you can look at the full evaluation report. One of the things I want to highlight about what we've learned, though, this is not going to be any surprise with those that are listening, is that we are in a state of a lack of affordable housing. And I would say that is the most notable barrier to stability. We know that. We know that this is true, and we have seen this across the country, especially attenuated here within our community. And that is not also to say that it is just a housing issue. I would offer to say it is not just a lack of affordable housing issue, but we also know that more youth move into destabilization of housing and housing instability and feel the effects of lack of housing, homelessness, based on the violence that they have within the homes, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, as well as violence that we have in communities. So while we are solving for more housing, we also need to solve for good housing, safe housing, peaceful communities. What we've also learned is this journey takes from the time that we've ID'd a youth. Sonya may even say that might be a little too late, but once we've ID'd a youth and moved them through into housing, 179 days that a youth has experienced housing instability and homelessness. We are still looking to see and how that compares across other communities, but I would tell you 179 days is too long, and that we have to commit to look differently. It is often, and we know this, difficult for youth to obtain housing. We know that it is difficult based on stigmas, based on bias. I would tell you it is even difficult because we sometimes shame and blame the youth in which we're serving. We know that there are structures that are set up in that. So that is why it is imperative that we join in collective force. We educate landlords, we educate community, but more importantly, we inspire engagement and commitment that there should be no youth that should be experiencing homelessness, and our programs not only should support that, but reflect that. We are working with our youth. We are serving partners, but I would tell you that we are sitting in this space in need of innovation for housing options, in need of more housing options, and also in need of a more strident commitment for the moment that we are in. So let's talk a little bit about also what we're doing well. The demonstration project, we have seen some exceptional outcomes. 98% of youth exiting our programs are stably housed 1 year later. That is something to celebrate. Very few times do I think we all sit, Councilmember Shayla Favor, Sonya, that we sit in spaces and we get to celebrate when something is put into place with excellent outcomes. I think this is something that we say not only we can celebrate, but potentially duplicate, ensuring that our youth are stably housed. We've also received feedback from focus groups. We've received feedback through those interviews that show that youth are feeling important, they're feeling centered, and that they're feeling more supported than ever before. As we know what's doing well, I think it is important for us to continuously to self-reflect and to talk about what's also our opportunities for improvement. And in that, we see really three big areas that need to be addressed. Leveraging collaboratively, address safety. And so how do we do that? It was a primary concern for this demonstration project. It was a primary concern for our youth and our youth partners. They felt particularly passionate about needing to address this fundamental concern. All partners are committing to addressing the safety needs and concerns of our youth and embedding safety planning into their work. We have put into place crisis prevention specialists that are working with community housing networks, Marshbrook Place, as well as Huck's House Transitional Housing Program. Likewise, as I noted before, we do know that the majority, upwards of 85% of our youth are in homelessness based on violence. Safety has to not only be a project goal, it has to be culturally how we move. We also know that increasing quality training for staff is important. Our partners are engaged in training initiatives, and these results show within our 2021-22 evaluation. But there needs to be continued opportunity to improve the experiences that we have and those that are working with you. We also know that, as I showed on that graph, this is not a linear process. When you deal with human fragility, it is dynamic, it is seasonal, it is transitional, but for some, it is a strident, reticent factor that we have to consistently refresh ourselves for. So we are committed that instead of having just one or two times in which things can be trained, that there's going to be quality training that's going to be ongoing, that we're going to have the experience of learning be experiential versus just in training and in one-time opportunities. And that we know that we have to make sure that those spaces around trauma-informed care, around cultural competency, around equity will help partners improve not only their outcomes, but we know to improve our human capital around our staff retention and our recruitment. And then finally, improve data management. That improvement we'll see because of our collective impact that the collection of data is needed. It can be a challenge for any individual partner. We know that collecting the data is important as we also move in the federal level to say that this demonstration project has been not only of quality, but excellently done. Again, knowing that on an individual basis that could be onerous and arduous. We know that we need to reinforce a culture that values this best practice data. So we're going to look at data management. We're going to look at practices to align, to maintain, to synergize, to synthesize reporting standards. We think it's important for our continuum of care that the partners feel that they can count on each other and that we as a system can continuously refresh this space with tools that help for capacity, for collecting, and also for funding within this space. Goals as we move forward. Our goals around youth homelessness are a really big, broad goal as we stand within this space and we look at all of these partners that are hands in, eyes on, hyper-focused on making sure that we're taking care of you. And that is that we're coming together regularly, that these youth committees and the board that have been identified are also working towards those three goals, that we're moving forward and that the system is not only sensitive, but responsive to those continued goals and those continued needs. Likewise, that out of all of these recommendations and evaluation, that these goals will be tackled first, that we are going to be committed and our committee, excuse me, into improving our data collection and better addressing our mental health, and overarchingly having a better responsiveness to our youth needs. Again, whether that is collecting data on sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, or having a better understanding of the needs of youth and its access of equity. We know that we also have to be leaned in with better questions. We have to be leaned in with better conversations so that we're partnering and also seeing a level of involvement that involves our youth advisory board, that around mental health needs of youth, that we need to identify more programs that meets the mental health needs of youth while we are working with all of our resources within our community, that we're sitting at the table articulating those, and that we are doing that in a way that not only gets resources here, but inspires us to review innovative, creative ways to do more. Again, this feedback is going to be very much centered on the feedback of the Youth Advisory Board members, on what they and their peer needs are saying, are highlighting as being the key clear indicators. We also know that in our own responsiveness to youth needs, that we need to do more around workshops with topics like, how do I search for an apartment? How do I search for a job? How do I make sure that I am moving in a space around wellness and in health, and then connecting to those resources? We know that we need to channel our youth voice. And that in that sometimes as baked people, we have to center and move aside while listening, while we're seeing and supporting positive youth development. And then finally, which we've noted before, there has to be more innovative housing, not only that keeps safe our youth, but ensures that they are bettered for what's next. So we have to do some planning on our own on how to move those resources with not only within the youth, but within families and friends, and then sharing those living models, having host families, and growing the number of supportive people within this community, which includes landlords, for those that are willing to host and rent to youth. Finally, I want to say thank you for this time that was given to the Community Shelter Board, not only to talk a little bit about our overarching continuum of care system, but also to our commitment to Huckleberry House, to you, Sonya, but also to our commitment to continue to be a space where we are activating not only resources, but voice to what we know has to be eradicated, which is youth homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon, for such a comprehensive overview of the work. I think we've already chatted the links for the executive summary and final report, but we might put those up again so you can get to those easily. If you have any questions for Shannon or as we move forward, please place them in the chat, and we'll take a few minutes at the end of today's presentation to answer questions. Now that we've had this great overview about the collective impact of Community Shelter Board and the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, I'd like to talk a little bit about Huckleberry House and the services we provide to the youth in our city. I always like to share our mission and vision statements first. With hope, we shelter, support, and guide youth navigating challenges. Our vision is thriving youth no matter their journey. Huckleberry House was founded in 1970 in response to the prevalence of runaway youth around the Ohio State campus. Since then, we have expanded our programs, but always with a focus on keeping youth safe and helping them on the path to the life they see for themselves. Before I jump into our current programs, I want to share some of the impact we saw and achieved in 2022. 1,239 youth were served across our 4 core programs. We provided a total of 35,953 nights of shelter, and that's in our Teen Crisis Center and housing programs, and 10,874 hours of life skills training and mental health interventions were provided across Huckleberry House. Behind every one of those numbers, there's a story about a young person. We published our annual report in November, and it includes some special stories. And that annual report can be found on the website, and I think Carol just linked it in the chat. So you can check out some stories there. This slide shares 3 of our 4 programs. Our crisis shelter is the only teen crisis shelter in Central Ohio for unaccompanied minors ages 12 to 17 who have run away, been kicked out, or do not feel safe at home. It's the only place a teenager can come, knock on the door, and be welcomed in. The shelter can house up to 20 youth at a time, and a typical stay is 5 to 7 days. Throughout their stay, the youth eat meals together, do chores, attend outings, group sessions, and counseling sessions. The goal of our crisis shelter is to resolve issues so youth can return home safely. If that's not possible, then we help identify alternative positive living situations. In 2022, 91% of the youth who were served by the teen shelter were safely transitioned to safe housing. The counseling center in the middle of the screen is located directly behind the crisis shelter in Wineland Park and specializes in working with teens, young adults, and families to help solve even the most challenging problems. In addition to serving our own clients, the counseling center provides services to students in schools without counseling programs and other community-based clients. One of the greatest challenges in serving at-risk and homeless youth is that they don't often know that there are resources available to help, let alone how to access them. Our Youth Outreach Program, or YOP, provides individualized services directly to young people experiencing challenges related to unstable housing, and we can meet them wherever they are. The only program of its type in Central Ohio, YOP is a team of trained professional staff who engage with youth to prevent homelessness and provide them with the needed supports and resources they need to increase their stability. In 2022, the YOP team responded to 600 requests for support. 333 young people were given a resource or were referred to CAR, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Now our housing programs. As Shannon explained, there is a range of housing programs that comprise the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project. Huck House is involved in different capacities with each of these housing options. Our housing programs combine safe, fully furnished apartments with access to a dedicated team of counselors and support staff to help young people ages 17 to 24 learn not just how to live on their own, but how to thrive. The core of our housing is the Transitional Living Program, or TLP. As you can see, we have TLP units at 2 locations, Jefferson Avenue and Kenmore Square. Of our 45 units of TLP, 24 units are funded by HUD through CSB as part of the demonstration program. We also have units that are funded by Health and Human Services and victim of crime funding. TLP serves youth who are homeless, unstably housed, and or fleeing domestic violence. Youth in the program reside in those furnished apartments for 12 to 18 months. And while participating in TLP, we wrap a continuum of services around these young people, including independent living and vocational skill building. We rent Jefferson Avenue from the Jefferson Avenue Center. It's a great intimate community and is walkable to Columbus State. It's a really active group of residents. We maintain 1 apartment as a staff office, and it's kind of a common space that's always bustling with youth and staff. Huckleberry House purchased Kenmore Square in 2020. We only needed 26 units for our TLP program at the time, but having been involved in the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project, we knew there was a demand for units that other youth partners could master lease. So at Kenmore Square, we house 26 Huck House youth and 28 other youth and families who are funded by Home for Families, Kaleidoscope, and the Center for Healthy Families. We are so excited about the model we are creating at Kenmore Square. With outdoor common space and a community center in the middle of the campus, there are lots of opportunities for youth and staff to build relationships. There are cooking classes, yoga, art, and support groups being held in the community room every week. All the programs that are held at Kenmore are open to all the residents there. We also offer case management and therapy to everyone who lives at Kenmore. At this point, I always like to share that about half of our housing program participants have children of their own. For example, at Kenmore, we have 54 young people, and we range between 30 to 35 little ones from newborn to age 8. So we've got a new play set, and there's a parent mentor serving the young parents at Kenmore. In 2022, we had a 95% occupancy rate for our Huckleberry House TLP. 29 youth exited during the year, and 90% of them exited to stable housing. 49% moved into their own apartments, 24% are living with family, and 14% are living with friends, and 3% went to the Job Corps program. The Permanent Supportive Housing Program at Marshbrook Place serves youth ages 18 to 24 in a 40-unit development that is owned and managed by Community Housing Network. Marshbrook Place is the first permanent supportive housing building for youth in Central Ohio, and when it opened in August of 2020, HUD's regional director visited and said he saw it as a model for other communities across the country. We provide case management, therapy, and support to the tenants who reside in furnished apartments on a longer-term basis. This is a really strong option for youth who have more intense mental health needs or have experienced more trauma because the 18-month time frame is removed. It's still too soon for us to have a significant data collection around exit information, as we've only measured through 2 full years. And again, it's not an 18-month program. The construction of the building, though, is so perfect. It provides space for support and community activities and provides the security of a single entry with 24-hour staffing. It's truly an ideal space, and I wish everyone could see it. So in addition to the units of TLP that are funded through the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program and the master leases to other partners, Huck House plays an important role in helping youth access housing. As Shannon shared, we were charged in Central Ohio with creating a youth system, and key to building any system is a way to access it. Serving as Central Ohio's Coordinated Access Rapid Resolution, or CAR team, it's a mouthful, Huck House assists homeless youth as they gain access to Community Shelter Board or HUD-funded youth system housing. A CAR specialist works with youth while they are awaiting housing, and they work to be sure that all the paperwork is in order, making sure that youth have access to the food and other benefits that are available to them. And we just keep in touch for the check-ins that are required to stay on the CAR list. As the only youth organization partner in the YHDP, we take our work with CAR very seriously. It's part of our mission. We know that young people do not want to access the adult shelter system as a path to housing. And most importantly, we understand that developmentally, youth need more and they need different support than is typically provided to adults. We say it all the time. A 20-year-old is still an adolescent. They don't make decisions the same way an adult does. They need more support. Until YHDP, there was not a youth-focused path to housing. Having our youth-focused team at Huck House as the entry point for housing was a really important result of the demonstration program. The team, the CAR team consists of 4 specialists, and they work alongside our youth outreach team. So to check in on Monday, the team shared with me that there are currently 11 youth waiting for a CAR specialist to be assigned to them. We're a little short-staffed right now, but we are maintaining 35 open CAR cases. I hope from that very quick description of our programs, you've gained a sense of the continuum of care we provide for youth ages 12 to 24. When we talk about preventing youth homelessness, I always look to the teen shelter. The top reason young people become homeless is a breakdown in family relationships. When a teen comes to our shelter, our masterful crisis team works to engage the youth and their families in counseling with a goal of family reunification. In our very best case scenarios, we can prevent homelessness for our youngest youth before it even begins. But in the many cases that do result in homelessness at that magical age of 18, our programs are designed to interrupt and experience the experience of homelessness early in its path to end homelessness. It is rewarding to be part of a youth housing system that is seeing a 98% success rate of youth remaining stably housed 1 year after leaving our program. Research from Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago found that for each night a young person sleeps outside, they are 2% less likely to maintain housing once they obtain it. So it is critical that we prevent homelessness or end it as quickly as possible. So Shannon shared that one of the goals for the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program is better responsiveness to youth needs. And I have two things I would add to the goals that Shannon outlined, and these aren't no surprise. She and I have talked about these ideas. The best way for me to talk about developmentally appropriate housing for youth is to ask you to think about another group of youth who are 18 to 22 years old, college students. A lot of research and funding goes into creating residential life programs for young people attending college. In most cases, a first-year student lives in a building with other first-year students. They probably enter and exit through one secure door. There is likely a resident or community advisor in the building who checks on the new students and plans events for them to adapt to living in their new community, and probably someone else checking in on their academics or their athletics or other activities at school. In their second year, they might live in a different building, probably larger, or maybe a campus apartment. And then in their third and fourth year, they get even more independence to move off campus and live in an apartment of their own. They start in the most supportive environment, the students might say, with fewer freedoms, but they then graduate to less restrictive or more independent living as they gain the skills and maturity. We all accept that as a normal, developmentally appropriate path for a college student. But when it comes to helping unaccompanied youth experiencing homelessness, the rules and systems that our funders impose upon us take the opposite approach. It's an approach that was created for adults and has not been refined for youth yet. We start them out in large, often scattered site apartments. If they are not able to thrive in these standalone apartments, they are then moved to a permanent supportive housing building. We know that for the developing brain, more boundaries and more support will lead to earlier success. There are also programs that are not allowed by some funders that we know from our experience contribute to success for the youth we serve. For example, savings accounts that teach young people to set aside enough money for rent has been an important part of our program graduate success after they leave our transitional living program. We have had to end that program because some rules won't allow us to hold money for youth in our programs. Finally, as has been shared and you all know, there is a serious affordable housing crisis in our community. We at Huck House have hesitated to go after more housing dollars to expand our transitional living program because it is nearly impossible to find apartments, let alone buildings or complexes to lease. We know that 179 days is far too long for a young person to wait for a unit, and we know more units would fill up very quickly. There simply is not enough stock of apartments in Central Ohio. What more is needed? Supporting human service staff at places like Huck House and other partners. We are so thankful for the city's innovative Elevate grant, which recognizes that it's not just about housing, it's the people side of it too. And we need staff to help guide the people we serve. The City of Columbus has been supportive of the work we are doing to address homelessness. The affordable housing crisis also affects the young people who graduate from our programs and are ready to rent their own apartments. Right now, it's difficult for them to identify affordable units to rent. This is a crisis many people and organizations in our city are addressing. We are fortunate today to have Councilmember Shayla Favor's leadership chairing city council committees, including Housing and Health and Human Services. Councilmember Favor, can you give a brief overview of your committee work and the city's plans to address housing needs?
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon to everyone, to Shannon and to Sonya. Thank you for extending the invitation for me to participate in this very important and timely conversation. Sonya, if you wouldn't mind, I think, and you just touched on it just a little bit, this work is so incredibly important, and it's so personal for many of us who engage with homelessness and particularly youth homelessness. And so it's important for me to ensure that we continue to support human service staff, right? What does that look like for us to continue to applaud the work that you all are doing, to continue to elevate the needs that are there, so that you all can continue to assist our most vulnerable. I've had the honor of being the chair of the Health and Human Service Committee for Columbus City Council, and have learned so much about the impact and the quality of life that you all have helped to provide our youth in Columbus. To support the mission and work of human services staff, our community has elevated the Human Services Grant, as Sonya has just acknowledged. It really took a great shift for us to get there, right? And our community was able to expand that work and support of the $5 million, which has been a flat funding for as long as I think human service grants have been around, to now 10 million, right? The intent is to ensure that we are including building and ensuring that the capacity needs are being met. And as Shannon has so carefully laid out the case before us, that capacity continues to grow as the crisis in Columbus continues to unfortunately expand. So we know that it's just simply not enough, right? But it is a step in the right direction. We are still tackling the roots of housing discrimination for the unhoused to better help our human services agents and advocates around ensuring that that there is access to safe and affordable housing for all in the city of Columbus. Homelessness is a deeply complex issue, and I'm contrary to popular opinion here, I don't think it needs to be that complex, right? It's complex for a certain reason, but that's probably a different webinar that we could have at a different time, right? But for the sake of time, it is a complex issue, and our approach at the city needs to be truly comprehensive in order to address that, right? So it has to address those immediate health impacts of our youth. We've got to tackle the affordable housing piece to ensure that all residents have access to safe and affordable housing. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? And so myself, including my colleagues, know that we have a lot of work to do in this space, but with great partners like Huckleberry House and like the Community Shelter Board, I believe that we are moving in the right direction. I'll stop there, Sonya, if you've got additional questions. I could keep going if need be, though.
We all are very excited about the plans laid out to address affordable housing
Yes.
by the city. And we even at Huck House are able to pull out the ones that will really impact the youth we serve. So I would encourage everybody to look at that plan.
Absolutely. If I have a moment, I could highlight that real quick.
I'm willing to give you a moment.
Okay. Well, if you all have not, if you're not aware, on March 16th, City Council announced our 2023 housing strategy with an aim to increase access to safe, stable, and affordable housing throughout the city of Columbus. As we know, our population is set to skyrocket in the next few decades. And with that population boom will come in increase in demand for housing. Yet we do not have enough housing stock to even meet the current need of Columbus and our regional folks as well. And so we are, in fact, in a housing crisis, one that is exacerbating the homelessness crisis in Columbus. I will also add on to that the existing eviction crisis that only helps to compound these issues that we're talking about here today. So how do we deal with that? It is a question that we at Council have been contemplating on for quite some time, and have resulted in the strategy that we released on March 16. And so we have divided the programs into 3 different areas that need to be addressed in Columbus housing sphere. That includes investment, it includes preservation, and it also includes inclusion, right? Too often, city policies have systemically disadvantaged lower income and minoritized communities, policies that have fed into the homeless crisis by precluding folks that fall into that category from stable housing opportunities. Our goal is to work with the entire Columbus community to strengthen our current approach with proposals and ensure that there is equitable investments in neighborhoods across the city that also preserve the culture of our neighborhoods and prevent gentrification from truly taking root in some of our key neighborhoods. I will say that something that is key to this conversation here is to highlight one of those policies, which includes $1.5 million that City Council has invested in funding for increased legal representation for those who are facing eviction. A recent report by the University of Wisconsin, Madison notes the linkage between being evicted and those who are facing homelessness. So our goal with this funding was to preempt wrongful evictions by ensuring that and providing vulnerable families with legal representation that can advocate for them in court and guide them towards a solution that does not stain their record, right? Another policy to highlight, and I'm not sure if you were going to go there, Sonya, is the Office of Fair Housing. Our goal is clear here, is to create an office to ensure renters' rights are protected. We still have a lot of work to do on this suite of proposals, but it's incredibly important to acknowledge the fact that housing discrimination is occurring in our community. Sonya and Shannon both acknowledged that today. And it would behoove us not to have a department that is focused on ensuring that those things that have been deemed you cannot discriminate against someone based upon their race, against their gender, sexual identity, religion, all of those things. And now in the city of Columbus, also your source of income, which is so incredibly important for our youth, that those rights are being protected. And that one way we can do that is through the creation of this Office of Fair Housing. There are 12 policies, ideas that are included in that. And so I would extend an invitation for all those who are watching today to tune in to City Council, as there will be opportunities throughout this year to engage on each of those 12 ideas that we have highlighted in our most recent announcement.
Thank you so much for that overview, Council Member. Yeah, I think there's a lot of momentum and it's needed. So thank you. I think we're ready to, okay. So again, thank you to both Shannon and Councilmember Favor. Now, after hearing all this tape, you're wondering what you can do to help. I have an idea for you. Here at Huckleberry House, we're getting ready for our annual event, Sleep Out. It's scheduled for Friday, April 21st. Sleep Out provides participants the opportunity to sleep outside in solidarity with youth who experience homelessness on a daily basis. We're going to share our 2022 wrap-up video. It's 3 minutes. I encourage you to visit our website for more information or to register to participate next week. As you watch the 3-minute video, please feel free to add any questions to the chat, and we'll try to get to those after the video.
We are down at the Coastside Plaza for a Sleep Out Columbus 2022. Yeah, right? We are raising awareness for youth homelessness. We are down at the Coastside Plaza for a Sleep Out Columbus 2022. Yeah, right? We are raising awareness for youth homelessness. I'm raising funds to support our housing program. We've had some learning stations from each of our 4 core programs.
Talk a lot about the nights of shelter we provide at Huck House, but just as important is all of the mental health and life skills training that we do. 2021, we provided 19,691 nights of shelter, but as important were the 9,355 hours of mental health services.
To be here, to see people showing up for our young people, to have a young person who I have so much love for and am inspired by get up and share her story. My heart is bursting with joy. I just feel warmth in my body, and it feels good to be here.
I didn't really know what trauma was at the time, but I experienced it. And I was homeless. Huckleberry House came like a superhero for me. And they told me that they cared about me, taking me to appointments, making sure that I had the things that I needed. That's something I did not have at the time, y'all. I was doing it by myself. And they came and did so much for me. And I would never forget everything that that program provided me with. And now I own a private chef service. I'm also contracted. Yes, 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 yes. Huckleberry House has definitely been a huge factor in my success. Thank you so much.
We really do need to rely on our community, our corporate sponsors, the individuals who are going to the website and making those donations. We really rely on every dollar that our community will trust us to spend wisely to help youth end their homeless journey. I was not paying attention. We're really looking forward to next week's 6th annual Sleep Out. We have just a few minutes left to answer any questions that have been placed in the chat. So Carol, have there been any questions for our panel? And she might be on mute. I think we're going to do it old school here. Carol, are you there? Or were there any questions for the panel? Okay, here's one. So how many, I guess this is probably for Shannon, how many youth total were served to get the 98% result at the Community Shelter Board in the demonstration project?
Twyla's on with those numbers. Twyla, do you mind responding or? Twyla's
That number is in the report, the exact number that they did survey. I don't have that exact number in front of me, but it is in the report.
Okay, great. Sorry, it took a minute for my screens to get me back to where I could unmute. The second question was, does the Youth Advisory Board include those with lived experience? I think
Yes.
that's also for Shannon. Yes. Yeah.
I'm looking through the number now.
Okay. And then maybe while you're looking for that answer, Shannon, the last question we had was for Sonya. Are you looking for volunteers, mentors, or people to help the youth? How can I become a member of YOP?
Well, I think there might be a job posting on our website to work with the YOP team. We do have a variety of volunteer opportunities throughout the year, but they're usually one-off situations where you might come participate in an activity or help with a special event that we're putting on for the youth. But again, I think on our website, the best thing to do would be to reach out through one of the support forms.
Great. And then back over to you, Shannon.
Yeah, yep, I found the numbers there. Thank you for the question. There are 1,254 youth that were served in the programs, and I would love to, if you don't mind, Sonya, just take a second to talk about the breakdown. So 258 were in the homelessness prevention, 18 for street outreach. But then we talk about how, and you saw from that chart, how youth moved through the system. So 680 went through the emergency shelter, 93 through transitional housing, 330 through rapid rehousing, and 135 through the permanent supportive housing portal. Hope that answers that question.
Okay. I think that was the last question. So I just want to thank both Shannon and Councilmember Favor for being with us today to address this really important topic. And we look forward to continuing the conversation, doing more of this. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.